Welcome back to All About America's Team, where we deep dive into the mediocrity of our favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys. I'm Ray Nickens,
And I'm Owens Chico.
and we have quite a jam packed show for everybody today. Dallas Cowboys have started training camp and have proceeded their way into padded practices. So we have a lot to discuss in that regard. But here are a couple things that we are going to address in this episode. Number one, we got camp news, some highlights from camp from the last 2 weeks. We got some camp battles who we think will get helped by going through a full season of camp, who will suffer by going through a full season of camp, and also address our 5 things the Cowboys must do to contend, as well as something that impressed us. And finally, we will close it out with the return of everybody's favorite segment, very subjective, Escape from Reality. We will save what that is about until we get there. But as always, Owen, take it away with our number one segment. The floor is yours.
All right. So just a bunch of news that I was intrigued to when it was released. Michael Gallup is on the PUP list. So there were a lot of reports about him maybe playing week 1, but that is definitely not going to happen. And then there are 3 players who are undrafted free agents that will also make the PUP list, and they were a wide receiver, cornerback, and a linebacker. Damone Clark is on the non-football injury list, and for all y'all that don't remember that name, that is the linebacker from LSU that Dallas drafted, who had the neck issue, who was a second round talent. And Mr. Jerry Jones said that he's going to be playing a lot quicker than people realize. So we will see the truth to those statements. And Jabril Cox is not on the PUP list, but is on a snap count and did look very good. So it's good to see. It's pretty insane to see how far surgery and technology has come to that athletes that tear their ACL can come back in 6-7 months and be the same player, if not better. So Ray, do you have any comments on those?
Well, to start off, I am very thrilled that our man from the draft who we grabbed mid draft is moving along in a very above expected pace, and that he will be back sooner rather than later. I still do not believe that he will see the field this year, which is totally fine, but it's nice to know that he may be ready for the start of the next off season, and he can start positioning himself for a great camp for 2022-2023. That would be this year, 2023 to 2024, and hopefully find his way into finding and having a lot of snaps for that year. Also, very happy that Jabril Cox is getting healthy. He's practicing. Can't wait to see him out there with Micah Parsons. Unfortunately for Owens guy Leighton Vander Esch, the clock is ticking for him as a member of this football team, as there are a lot of talent in this locker room, really, including Dante Fowler, who is not very, we don't know about him, but
True.
he's there. Leighton Vander Esch is still there, but he has an injury history. We got Jabril Cox back, Parsons. Overall, very solid linebacking room, which is very nice to see. Yeah,
It
I mean
is it is nice to see.
that's really all I got for that.
Yeah.
Just all
Yeah,
very positive things.
that is good. Positivity out of Ray's mouth is a good thing. Also, a very sad thing happened today. They were doing wide receiver cornerback drills, and Cooper Rush was the quarterback. And the reason why I mentioned that is because from the video that was shown, it was James Washington coming up against Trevon Diggs, and the ball was underthrown by a lot of yards, and people were trying to figure out who was throwing the ball because both Diggs and Washington were going to be playing with the number one. But they were like number ones. They were playing with the first team, and I was like, if Dak threw that ball, Ray is going to annihilate him. And
Never me
it was
annihilate him.
it was Cooper. And on the way down, Diggs rolled on James Washington's foot, and he fractured his foot, and he will be out for the next 6 to 10 weeks, which means that Dallas tonight should reach out to OBJ, even though he's not going to be healthy for a while. Reach out to Cole Beasley. Cole Beasley said that he is open to playing with Dallas because he wants to play with Dak. But the only issue that I have with that is because he doesn't have the vaccine. And they talked about availability and how Amari Cooper not having the vaccine was an issue. So I think that would kind of be contradicting themselves. But you have T.Y. Hilton, you have Willie Snead, you have Will Fuller, who could, I think, is probably the best out of all of them besides OBJ, who isn't healthy right now. But hopefully they can bring in one or two of those guys, because as of right now, your three starting wide receivers are CeeDee Lamb, um, Tolbert, who Ray likes a lot, and Noah Brown. And out of anyone in the wide receiver room, only one person has a touchdown, and that is CeeDee Lamb. And this right now, I think I'll say one thing, Ray, and then I want to get your thoughts on it. I think that Dalton Schultz and his agent are kicking themselves, because if this now is a perfect opportunity for them to be like, well, we're gonna sit, we want our money. But obviously, I don't think that would be a great decision to do. But Dallas is now relying more on Schultz than they were 24 hours ago. So, Ray, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we are starting off this show very well because I agree with that sentiment. If Dalton Schultz was a smart human, like we discussed in our last episode, and had not signed this wonderful contract known as the franchise tag, he would be in a very, very favorable position. He could be sitting out in
Cabo.
Cancun for all we know, sipping a nice margarita with his feet up, shades on, just with his phone on the table right next to his reclined beach chair, waiting for a phone call from Jerry begging him to take the max tight end extension that would inevitably have to offer him, considering that the wide receiver room is dropping like flies. Not to say that James Washington was anywhere near a top 50, 20 even receiver, but with the wide receiver room so depleted, Michael Gallup not going to be in there for week one. CeeDee Lamb, the CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott connection being inconsistent at best at some points, although we will get into some improvement that Owen saw and I read today. But still, we have no idea what that's going to look like in the actual season. Tolbert being a rookie, while I'm high on, he's still a rookie, and he was selected in the third round. And then, of course, Noah Brown, who's been a serviceable second, third team player. And, of course, we have Mr. Punt Return from the USFL himself um, as
Yes.
well. So,
Mr. Turpin.
so there's a lot of things that are open the air or are up in the air. And yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I disagree with is that Will Fuller is not the best player out of the best option out of any of the players. One, because he's hurt even more than Odell Beckham Jr. is always pulling his hamstring. He reminds me of my man Miles Austin, but also a little bit worse because he takes performance enhancement drugs and still pulls his hamstring.
This is true.
Um, I think I would definitely could see them going after Willie Snead. He was very serviceable with the Saints as well as the Ravens, so I like that acquisition. I don't understand why you'd sign OBJ for him to miss time. You'd still be missing a receiver, and I do think that OBJ will probably stay in LA, with it being with it being LA first and foremost, but then you have the sunshine, palm trees, close to the water, Hollywood, all that fun stuff. Um, yeah, who else did you list on of receivers they can
Um,
grab? Um,
T.Y. Hilton.
yeah,
I
T.Y.
only
Hilton.
reason why I said that um, Willie would be the best just because he hasn't. I just think that he probably, as of right now, um, is probably the freshest and is probably the fastest out of all of them.
Yeah, T.Y. Hilton. I mean, T.Y. Hilton would bring a veteran role to the team. It all kind of depends on how much he has left in the tank. However, he would
Yeah.
be, in the second wide receiver two spot, so he wouldn't be relied as a wide receiver one anymore.
Yep.
So I could see them doing that. However, I think Willie Snead playing, being fresh, being fast, wide receiver two, that would be probably the best option for the Cowboys. Although I don't really think it'll matter because Jerry Jones is not going to go after either any of them. He's going to say that the roster is fine how it is. And then we're going to see if that's the case in week one. And hopefully by week four, if Dallas is 0-4, then we might actually see them go after somebody. But
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, I don't really see much movement from them. Um, it sucks that James Washington is injured. But really, that's just kind of been the story of his career so far. So really, like I'm not gonna say I'm not surprised, but I mean I'm not shocked that he's down for 6 weeks.
Yeah, it was definitely sad to see just because of how important he was to this team as of right now. I definitely think that that Tolbert would eventually take over his role and eventually take his snaps. Um, but I do think that he will be missed, and hopefully, I don't know. It's definitely puts this team in a very bad position. Obviously, with trading Amari, but then Amari today hurt his ankle. I feel bad for him. He always has ankle issues. I'll never understand it. So I don't know. Dallas is always behind the eight ball with picking up players, and the last thing that you and I want is for them to go into the season like they did in 2018 with kind of a wide receiver by committee, and then having to go trade your first round pick for a player instead of doing it before the season started.
Well, I
But
mean, um, the Cowboys they could have been totally fine at wide receiver. I mean, I'm not saying that they take uh, Robert Michi, who is now has cancer, so that's not even a great example. Um,
yeah, that was
but
a very sad diagnosis.
yeah, but George Pickens was available for them to select. They could have taken Pickens and Tolbert if they really were concerned about wide receiver. So there was opportunity for them to really build up a young receiving core. They didn't do that. So they decided that defense was a better choice, which I'm not going to knock them for. I think it was the better choice, regardless of whether or not I agreed with the defensive player they
Mhm.
selected. Um, but there was a lot of wide receiver talent in this last draft. So I mean, if the Cowboys really were concerned about their wide receiver room, which I don't think they were, they could have easily loaded up on wide receivers and really set themselves up to be an offensive juggernaut, even with
Yeah,
most of those receivers being rookies. But um, I mean, all that to say that really, like, they thought that defense was going to be more important, and now they're just going to have to ride this wide receiver by committee, which is inevitable. But I think what the difference will be from 2018 is their defense are going to be able to help them out,
yep.
and also the fact that they are playing in the weakest division I've ever seen. So other than I guess um, there is I don't think they're the weakest division anymore, but their division is still pretty pathetic.
Yep.
So I do think they will be able to survive. based on the easiness of their schedule, playing the Lions, Texans, Jaguars, and then Washington twice, Giants twice, and all those fun teams. So I still think they're going to have a very good record. They're still going to make the playoffs. They're still going to win the division, but their offense is going to look a lot more pedestrian the first half of the year than we expect it to be, especially in the last couple of years when they've been number one or number two.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be nice this year to get a vintage Zeke year. I feel like if Zeke and Tony Pollard, like you've been saying right for the past, I don't know, 20 episodes, Dallas goes as far as the running game can take them. So hopefully they can lean on Zeke and Tony and Turpin because he can run, and Rico Dowdle, yeah, until Gallup comes back and kind of Dak and company take a step back.
Mm.
So hopefully that is what happens. But Ray, I'd like to know, unless you have anything else to say on that topic, what you think some of the most important camp battles are.
Mm. Well, I'm very glad you asked because I have quite a plethora of camp battles that I have written down many days in advance and now supposedly may or may not have to my left. But the first one being Mr. Tyler Smith and Mr. Connor McGovern for that left guard position. Now, if you have watched the last couple of episodes or been around the Dallas Cowboys All About America's Team Twitter, shameless plug, you will know that I have expressed my distaste for Mr. Tyler Smith, which is in no fault of it, which is not his fault. It is the fault of the Cowboys for picking him in that spot. Um, I think that in order for me to have to somewhat change my thoughts on him, he will need to win this starting job in camp and start for the Cowboys week 1 versus the Tom Brady Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If he shows a slow progression and he's not on the field in the starting lineup, it will just make me even more irritated considering who was available when they selected Mr. Tyler Smith. So I think that is a must win for him. I did see a video of him destroying Tristan Hill, which, while is a very fun highlight, it is not impressive considering it's Tristan Hill. I was honestly I forgot what the highlight was for because I just saw Micah Parsons run around Terrence Steele in that play, which wasn't as bad because it was a run to the opposite direction. So, but that's kind of getting off track. But anyway, Connor McGovern, if Connor McGovern is to win that starting job, it would be a win for Connor McGovern, but it would be a loss for me, Tyler Smith, and all the Cowboys fans out there who wanted Jermaine Johnson or even Tyler Linderbaum at center, who went the next pick after. Um, so yeah, that is my first camp battle I will be watching. The second one is Mr. Anthony Brown and Mr. Kelvin Joseph. Um, I think there should be very little contest in this, battle. I think Anthony Brown should win this battle easily. I don't think Kelvin Joseph really has a chance unless Anthony Brown just implodes, which is possible. It's the Cowboys. But
You're ruthless today.
I think on it overall, Kelvin Joseph has been a disappointment. While some of it him being injured for most of the year, he also has off the field issues. So really, it's a very upward climb for him to get really on the field, especially with the Cowboys' defense being, or in the secondary being above average right now. So I think for him to see the field, it's going to be more in like the rotational roles. But I mean, if he is to beat out Anthony Brown in camp, it would be cheaper for the Cowboys in that scenario, um, which is always nice, even though the Cowboys don't really spend anyway. Um, so Yeah, I think Anthony Brown will have the edge in that, but I do think it's a battle to watch, especially since there have been some positivity coming out of camp about Kelvin Joseph so far. Um, so that's definitely something to look out for. And my third and final battle of camp will shock some people because it probably isn't even a battle for the Cowboys themselves. But I have Mr. Ezekiel Elliott and Mr. Tony Pollard. There have been a lot of people in the fandom that have said Tony Pollard needs more carries. Zeke needs to not get so many carries. It should be Tony Pollard. His yards per carry is 10 yards. Blah blah blah. He's faster. He has more life in his legs. All that stuff. So I think depending on how well Tony Pollard produces in camp as well as the preseason, it may or may not determine whether or not how many carries Zeke gets. Because I'll talk a little bit more about Zeke later on when we kind of move into the next portion of this podcast. But I do think that I want to see Tony Pollard on the field more. He is electrifying when he is on the field. He gives the Cowboys a lot more momentum than when Zeke's on the field. So I do want to see him have a really good camp and kind of enhance his role in the offense. And I want to see him on the field more and getting more touches. So those are my three camp battles that I have solidified as a must observe for this offseason.
Well, I agree with you. You took all of mine, so congratulations on that.
Amazing.
Yes, the Zeke one, I I definitely understand where you're coming from. Shockingly enough, if you put his 5 or 6 years up against other greats, the numbers are on par, which is really weird, just because of how everyone's fallen off on him as of late. But in the beginning of last year, there were a few games where he looked like 2016 Zeke, and whether that was because the offensive line was playing well or he was playing well, it's it's could be a mixture of both. But I do think that Zeke tearing his knee, and even Zeke said last week in press conferences that he did lose his burst, which is good to hear that he feels like he's getting it back and he feels like he's healthy. The Anthony Brown one, I do not think Anthony Brown is going to lose that job. Kelvin Joseph will probably ride, or he'll probably get some splinters until he can show that he's mentally and physically strong enough to be out on the field. And then the Connor McGovern Tyler Smith one, I don't think there's any chance that Connor McGovern wins that. Um, wins that position battle. But let me think of any other ones. Um, it would be nice to see Tyler Biadasz versus the field as a camp battle. Hopefully, he can kind of um, solidify his starting role and have a good camp. But the other one my last one, I guess, is just the defensive line in general, because you have Demarcus Lawrence, who obviously is not losing his job. Dante Fowler, like Ray said, you have Terrell Basham, Sam Williams, the rookie. You have Dorrance Armstrong. You have Chauncey Golston. So
That's who it was. That's who it was.
who?
Um, I apologize, everyone. I threw the Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard in there because I forgot my original camp battle. The original camp battle was Dorrance Armstrong and Sam Williams / Demarcus Lawrence. But yeah, I'll continue. You can have that one.
Thank you. I do think that well, if I don't say anything that you want to add, just please do. I don't think that Demarcus Lawrence is going to lose the job. From what I've heard and seen, he's at a really good camp, and Dan Quinn loves him, so he won't be going anywhere. But Michael Parsons said a very high things about Sam Williams, and he's been talked about very highly, which is a good thing. Um, Obviously, team members aren't going to bash him, but it is good to hear Michael Parsons talk about him highly. And I mean, it's fans, unless they're in California right now in Oxnard watching them, we're not really gonna be able to see or 100% individually fall in love with these guys or see if they're good until preseason. So I'm gonna kind of wait to make some bold predictions or decisions or who I think is gonna win until there, because defensive ends, rotational guys, it's more difficult to see because a lot of the people that are taking the videos are just getting like flashy plays from the second group, and most of them are from the group of ones. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I think Ray and I really have to stop letting you go first with these because you always end up taking mine.
Well, I have nothing else to say. Let's move on.
What? Who do you? Well, I guess Zeke's gonna talk about him, so you could talk about him right now. Whose stock do you believe is going to rise or fall due to training camp?
Well, I think I definitely. I'm just gonna kind of a little repeat myself just a little bit really quickly. I think Tony Pollard's stock has a lot of chance to really, skyrocket in camp. He's going to most likely see a decent amount of touches in the preseason. However, that might change with the injuries of the offense. And might want to kind of save him for the regular season. But I doubt Ezekiel Elliott's going to play very much. But I mean, if and this one is not barring really on performance as much as it is fan appreciation and buzz in the media. Um, I think if you see a great preseason out of Tony Pollard and a lackluster non-showing preseason from Zeke, you're going to get a lot of talk around the fandom, a lot of talk in the media. Should Tony Pollard get 18 carries a game? Should he get 30 touches or not 30? Should he get like 24 touches a game? How many touches should Zeke really be getting during the game? And then, of course, if the Cowboys start losing games early on, which they inevitably probably will, the questions will get a little bit higher. Is Zeke really helping them by playing? Should Tony Pollard be getting more carries? He's averaging so and so carries, blah blah blah. So, I definitely that's going to be kind of a Zeke's lack of really doing anything in the preseason, and Tony Pollard's extensive workload in the preseason, plus camp highlights that we see on Twitter. We could see the fans inevitably turn on Zeke, which some of them I've already have turned on Zeke. But we could see a huge kind of shift there, especially the fans who are more pro Dak than Zeke. They could be pushing Zeke out the back door if Tony Pollard is really playing well and Zeke starts off slow and looks slow, not hitting holes very quickly, not bouncing off tacklers anymore. Like we could see some shift based on that in camp. I also think I remember. I think stock as a stock rising. This is gonna shock Owen probably, most likely. I see Trayvon Diggs his stock could fall based on his camp showing in preseason. I mean he had a historically great second year last year with the interceptions but I mean, he was burned a lot in coverage, and I mean, you can argue that. I mean, Owen has brought up the argument of Jalen Ramsey had a bad rookie year in coverage and all that stuff. But I mean, it was with Trayvon Diggs, it was either interception or he was getting burned for 70 yards down the field for a touchdown. So, I mean, I think that what this off not the off season, we're more in camp, but this camp it's going to be really important for him, especially in the preseason and as well as the early on in the regular season. I don't really care as much about the interceptions. I mean, the turnovers are great, but I want him to be a lot more of a conventional corner. I don't want to see him getting targeted and picked on and quarterbacks taking chances on him and risking the interception knowing that they're going to get the big play. I'd rather them throw it at Anthony Brown 35 times than throw it at Diggs 5 times. And I know that's not going to happen overnight, but I do want to see a little bit of shift from that interception burned for touchdown to more of a incomplete. And I think where his stock could fall in camp is if we're seeing, Dak Prescott burning him a lot, or Cooper Rush picking on him, or in the preseason, however much he plays, he gets burned for a touchdown, stuff like that. Um, and then if that kind of transfers over into the regular season, we're not seeing him bring in them have the success that he had last year with the interceptions, but the big yards given up stays the same, the big plays stays the same, the touchdowns against him stay the same. We can really see a kind of a stock really fall in that sense. So those are kind of my two, or my I guess my two stocks that could fall. One stock that can go high. Another one that I'm thinking of right now, Jalen Tolbert. We could see his stock rise as well based on his performance in the preseason. But I'll kind of shift over um, I guess, the baton to you, let you talk for a little bit, and just sit back and listen.
All right, yeah, I think Diggs. I feel like a lot of so he did get burned against AJ Green. That was definitely bad on Diggs. I feel like that. So if talking about big plays that I can remember, the
That might have
play
been my favorite
against
play of the year.
the Patriots late in game, that was 100% on number 18. I forget his name, Achilles' brother. I
Mr.
don't think.
KZ.
Yes, there you go.
He was also
Um,
arrested over the bye week.
yes, no, over the yeah. Um, the play against Washington where the wide receiver just made a great play. That was a 50-50 ball that Diggs just didn't get, so you can blame him for that. But I don't think that Diggs is going to. I don't think that you're ever going to see him be like a conventional lockdown because even Ramsey said that him and Diggs just played corner two very different ways. I believe it's in phase and out of phase. I'll have to do more research on that to get more textbook definition of what those mean. But I believe basically it's just you either like I don't know. I feel like Diggs kind of loses each play a little bit, but then he um, quickly gains and most of his interceptions, like the one where he picked off Justin Herbert. You saw him run the route for the wide receiver. So hopefully Diggs I haven't seen him get beat from the videos or anything like that. So, but granted, they're 5-second clips, and they could definitely I could definitely just not seen one or someone does not videotape it. But mine, I feel like Kelvin Joseph's stock could rise, just having more faith in him. Tyler Smith, Tolbert, and TJ Vasher, great touchdown for camp. He's big. He played for Texas Tech in college, I believe. So, some Texas. He's from Texas. Went to
Mm.
college in Texas, and then
I was
my
I was a big fan of that play.
so was
Um,
I. It was very good.
I was also a big fan of Will Greer throwing it's
Yes.
such a great football.
Yeah.
Really made me happy.
I guess another camp battle is quarterback too, either Will Greer or Cooper Rush.
I mean, if Cooper Rush loses that job, I will be shocked considering he has an NFL win on his resume
This is true.
in historic fashion, might I add.
This is true.
Um,
And for what were you gonna say?
oh no, just really quickly in regards to Trayvon Diggs, I think I the thing that my issue with him is not necessarily him not being a full on conventional corner. It's the risk taking. I mean, every corner is going to take risks and pay for it every once in a while, but he literally plays um, pouring gasoline on fire, and that's why he's always I mean, there are plays from even the Carolina game where he runs across the field and leaves Robbie Anderson wide open. And if there's a competent quarterback, maybe even me playing quarterback, I would have thrown it to Robbie Anderson and probably thrown it 20 yards in front behind him. So it wouldn't even have mattered. But still, he was running wide open by himself. But like they're just stuff like that where he's leaving his his
Simon.
responsibility to go play the middle of the field, which I think is while he did get the interception, like it was like a what are you doing? We can't play this way type
Yeah.
of play. So that's what I'm kind of saying is more kind of more be a little bit more conventional, stick to his scheme, his area, maybe play a little bit more safe. I mean, the interceptions are going to come because he has wide receiver hands,
Mm.
but I'd rather, like I said, I'd rather see 5 interceptions than and top 10 coverage stats than 13 interceptions and bottom 10 coverage stats.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I feel like I don't not I feel like his so I saw a stat that kind of took away plays that were put against him for him just being the closest corner, and he gave up 790 yards, which I believe is on par with Marshawn Lattimore. Let me just confirm that. And so I feel like a lot of things can just get blown out of proportion with just yards and everything like that. But yeah, so for 2021, he apparently gave up 998 yards. I believe if that's what I'm seeing correctly.
Basically, what they're saying is that he gifted the wide receivers that he was covering almost as many yards as Ezekiel Elliott ran for in 17 games. This is news to me.
But I may be reading this wrong. Oh, never. That's snap. Never mind. That is snap count. Give me there. There it is. Okay, 826, which is still lower. Obviously, if they figure out, it'll probably be lower than that. But if you're just going to go based off 826, that's still about 100, around 100 yards lower than Diggs got. And 790 divided by 17 is 46. So Diggs basically gave up 46 yards a game.
Amazing.
Amazing indeed. But transitioning to Ray's one of his favorite topics of today, 5 things that Dallas can do to beat championship contenders. And I'm gonna go first, so Ray doesn't take any of
I was
mine.
about to give you the 4.
Thank you
You
so. I feel honored. And mine is one of these is for present, but others are for what Dallas can do for long term. So my first was sign Odell, but that was before the Washington injury. So I'm just gonna say sign a wide receiver. What they could do is change the offseason approach, and instead of waiting until the draft, you can fill your holes in free agency so that you can draft best player available. I would like them to name Will McClay the official GM because he basically is the GM, but it would be nice to see him get the title that he deserves. But he's definitely making GM money because other teams have wanted him and he's still a part of Dallas. I would like them to re-sign their star rookies early, i.e., Dak and Zeke, from a few years ago, so that you aren't behind the 8 ball constantly. That's why I would, if CD does have a strong showing with Gallup out, just sign him then, because I could definitely foresee them waiting until his contract year and him going to like Buffalo or something. I would also like Jerry Jones and Steven to take a step back. Jerry, I feel like, is all talk now. Steven is the real one that is making all the business decisions And there have been players in the past, like Randy Gregory. I remember when he decided to go to Denver. Like he liked the tweet that talked about Stephen Jones just being horrible to talk to, and I feel like for an organization to be successful, you need people that don't have the same last name as the owner, because then I don't think I saw someone say I find it very hard to believe that the or like the few best people for the job share the same exact last name as you. And I think that there are other people that are better for the job. And if not, if Steven, if he's made good decisions in the past, like having them not draft Johnny Manziel. But I feel like if there was someone more football minded instead of money minded, then I think Dallas would be better overall. But Ray, comments, and then what are your five?
Um, well, my first comment is going to be on Jerry Jones. You will never convince me. I don't care how many stats or tweets or notes that you throw at me. Jerry Jones is the final decision maker of any sort of decision related to the Dallas Cowboys. He's been that way since he's bought the team. He's the reason why the Cowboys are mediocre, because he fired Jimmy Johnson all those years ago. Just because Jimmy Johnson didn't toast or didn't do it his way for so long, and he got so tired of him getting all the credit, he wanted the credit, so he booted him. I mean, that's why Jerry is signing all these puppet coaches. We have Jason Garrett, we have Mike McCarthy, we have Barry Switzer, we have Wade Phillips, all these head coaches that were vanilla, cartoon, archaic, yes men. That's Jerry Jones. The two solid coaches that he had running his team, Jimmy Johnson and Bill Parcells, either were fired or left because they couldn't stand him anymore.
And I
So
actually met Bill Parcells. He grew up in the town and played baseball in my town, and I got to shake the man's hand.
amazing. This
Yes,
is
amazing
this is
indeed.
a this is a fact that everyone needed to know.
It is a fact that everyone needed to know.
Um, but yeah, Jerry. I mean, I do agree with you on the in the sense that Jerry Jones needs to get his head out of any decision room imaginable for this team. He needs to get rid of anyone who doesn't deserve to be in their position and find the right people to run the football operations of this franchise. Because Jerry Jones can run every business aspect of this franchise. He can even keep his radio shows. I don't care, as long as he's not making football decisions, which he unfortunately is still making those decisions. That's why the Cowboys are where they are right now, which is just good enough to have us talking about them. But yeah, that's kind of what my thoughts on that regard. And then I believe you were kind of talking about um, extending rookies
Rookies,
early, which
yep.
I completely agree with. I think that they absolutely need to do that. And then the fact that you said change their approach, I absolutely agree with that as well. I know that the Cowboys have been solid in drafting talent and building them up, but I don't really necessarily care, because
Yeah.
what do Super Bowl teams do? They sign free agents. The Rams went and got Odell. They went and got Von Miller. What did they do? They won the Super Bowl. And both of those players played a huge part in winning the Super Bowl. Also, they went and got Matthew Stafford, free agent. Huge upgrade from Jared Goff.
They
4
traded
0
for him.
postseason. Traded. What? Same thing. 4 0 in the playoffs, 3-game winning drives, and great playoffs. Had never really done anything in the playoffs until he got to LA, and then he showed everyone what he could do. That was another offseason acquisition. They rebuilt in the offseason again.
Allen
When
Robinson.
it got Allen Robinson, Bobby Wagner to replace the loss of Von Miller. So that's what teams do. They rebuild in free agency. Same thing for the Broncos. They finally said, hell with Teddy Bridgewater, hell with Drew Lock. We're going after franchise QB. When it got Russell Wilson, he's going to totally change their life on offense. He's going to be a counterpiece to a very good defense that they've had for a long time. So the Broncos are going to be just fine. Same goes for the Chiefs or the Dolphins. Even better, even better. When he got Tyreek Hill, just saw a Twitter or a video on Twitter of Tua launching a 65-yard bomb to Tyreek Hill, hit him in stride, touchdown. That offense is going to explode with Hill and Waddle. That's how you improve your team. Going through the draft is nice. Getting players like Micah Parsons is nice. Getting players like CeeDee Lamb is nice, but they're unproven rookie players. If you want to build your team and improve, you got to get veterans who one are good, two have been there before. And the Cowboys have not done that for a long time, and that's why they're kind of in the position where they are. But that's how I'll leave that there, and I'll just throw in a couple more things that I think the Cowboys must do to be playoff ready and actual threats to the Super Bowl. Number one, this is very important. I think they need new leadership. I'm over the leadership of the head coach. I don't think he's the right guy. Not a fan of what he says in press conferences. There, he said something in the press conference saying they asked him how he felt about his job security, and he immediately responded with a pushback, argumentative response of that has nothing to do with football or my how I do my job, which is completely irrelevant because it does actually mean like how he's doing his job. Because if he was doing his job, he would not be on the hot seat. But I'm just kind of over him. I don't think he's that great of a motivator. I mean, Owens argued that you don't need your head coach to motivate you, which I think is not true. I mean, he's the coach for a reason. His job is to get the team ready to play, to go through the game plan, to run through situational football. Basically leave no stone unturned, especially getting up to a playoff game, and then when all of a sudden you're down to Jimmy Garoppolo, there's something wrong, and you can't expect your quarterback to dig you out of the hole every time and expect to keep your job. So, I mean, there's been talks of people saying that Dak Prescott needs to be the leader of the team and the hype man and getting the team ready. I think Dak Prescott is a serviceable leader in the locker room. However, I mean, he hasn't really shown that he can motivate the team to really get up and play well, especially when he's going out there and laying eggs in the first, second, and third quarter himself. So, I mean, I think they got to find leadership somewhere else. I think Dak is a great leader of men, not the greatest motivator. I think they're gonna have to need someone like a Des Bryant. Des Bryant was really good at motivating the team. Maybe Micah Parsons can fill that role. Maybe Demarcus Lawrence can fill that role. Just one of the tough defensive guys needs to kind of take ownership of that. But I definitely think that Mike McCarthy has one foot out the door, barring no choice of his own. I could see Dan Quinn being in that spot, maybe even Sean Payton, but I think Sean Payton's kind of unlikely considering he would want control of the team and Jerry Jones would probably not give him control of the team. So I think the most likely scenario is honestly Dan Quinn getting the job. So I definitely think new leadership is necessary. Next thing I do think that they need to do is very controversial, and Owen's not going to like this one, but it is necessary, and that is get rid of old talent and replace it. What do I mean by that? The Cowboys have a lot of players on this team who have been there for a long time. One being Demarcus Lawrence, one being Michael Gallup, one being Tyron Smith, Zach Martin. I mean, they've all spent a lot of quality time with the team, and I think there's going to come a point when you have to evaluate your roster and say, you're not helping us win anymore. So it might be time to kind of go in a different direction. That's where that off season magic comes into play. If you're looking at your team and you're saying Demarcus Lawrence is, he had another great run stopping year, but really didn't help us that much in the passing game or in the pass rushing game. Are you really going to keep him, or are you going to go after another player who is above average in run stopping but gets you a lot of pass rushing stats and really impacts games? Are you going to go after that guy? Or are you going to stick with Demarcus Lawrence just because you drafted him? Same thing goes for Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup, he's been serviceable. He's done his job, but he's hurt a lot, and really honestly hasn't made playoff changing plays for the team when it matters in the postseason. So, are you going to stick with him? Are you going to go after an Odell Beckham Jr. or upgrade in the draft, or try and get a huge trade for a big time wide receiver, something like that? Those are just kind of examples. It doesn't have to be those exact people. I do think they're going to have to readdress the offensive line this next year in the draft with Zach Martin and Tyron Smith being pretty old now. So that will definitely need to happen. Same thing could go with Ezekiel Elliott. This is a make or break season for him. If he continues to decline and the Cowboys don't go anywhere, I definitely think Zeke is not going to be on the team anymore. So I think that's the more set in stone. Out with the old, in with the new situation. But I do think that for the Cowboys to get where they need to go, they're going to have to reevaluate the roster and really, be objective about this situation. Not have the love for the guys they drafted and keep them because of that, but actually move on and try and find people who can actually been there before, or b young and can and make them a better team overall. And the last thing, which is a more current thing, and I've talked a while, so I'm going to make this one quick because it's really easy. Is clean up the penalties. Dallas was
That's
the
a good
worst
one.
team in the NFL in penalty yards allowed and just penalties in general. On both offense and defense, they had the most penalties ever by a Cowboys team in the playoff game against the 49ers, which was pathetic and abysmal. And then also in the regular season, they were just awful with penalties as well. So that's another reason why I think Monty needs to get out of here, is because he is managing one of the worst the Cowboys penalty teams I've ever seen. That it's time for him to it's time to get their act together, get rid of the penalties, get rid of the dumb mistakes. And that's really going to kind of help them out more in a consistent base when it comes to trying to get to where they need to go.
May I respond?
Of course.
Okay, so the going back to what you said before about McCarthy being a yes man, I can get that in some respects, but I do think that Mike has gotten upset with Jerry and the front office. I remember, I don't know if it was something to do with the team, and someone asked Mike what's going to happen. He was like, we haven't decided yet. And then Steven or Jerry said, well, this is going to happen. And I feel like you're setting up any head coach for failure when you're making the decisions instead of the head coach. I do think that in Mike's first year with Dak going down, them winning the amount of games they did, I believe it was 6. That was so.
But
Was
who did so? Here, just two quick things. One,
mm,
Mike McCarthy can be upset that Jerry Jones said what was going to happen, but I'm sure Jason Garrett was upset when Jerry Jones did stuff like that. He just wasn't as vocal about it. Mike McCarthy can be as vocal as he wants, still doesn't change the fact that Jerry Jones is running the show, and all Mike McCarthy is really doing is just standing on the sideline and being and sulking that he doesn't really have any power. But as for the actually, just keep going. I'll let you keep going. Keep going.
okay. I do think that one thing that Mike did for the Packers, I believe, is that he called the plays. He doesn't call the plays here, so he kind of just so he definitely clock management he needs to work on, and when he calls his timeouts, because that always bothers me when he just calls meaningless timeouts or just wastes them. It always confuses me. Going to what you said about the biggest point about getting rid of players that have been there for a long time. Gallup, you mentioned not having a lot of um, playing well in the playoffs. He played in 2 playoff games, and I will always remember him kind of starting off Dallas against Seattle with the Dak through a fade, I guess you could say, to the right side of the end zone, and Gallup caught it to put them in the game. So he has been in 2 games, started one, has 15 targets, 8 receptions, 137 yards, 1 touchdown. Um, and yeah, so that is over 2 games, and he got, if I remember correctly, he was much, his presence was felt a lot more in the Seattle game. Um, Injuries do hurt, but I do think that if Zach Martin, he hasn't fallen off a bit, so I don't think that his name should be brought up. And maybe you were just saying that because of um, age. I do think I feel like for defensive ends, if all you look at is sacks, then that's not kind of the best way to go about it. Obviously sacks are important and are flashy, but the defense as a whole got better as soon as Demarcus Lawrence stepped foot on the field. He had a pick six, he caused a few fumbles, and he just sets the edge. You would like to see him get his sack numbers up, and hopefully he can do that this year. And I think that it motivated him that a rookie got 13 sacks, and he hasn't even touched 7 sacks or he hasn't touched that many in a few years. So I think that that's definitely a motivator. Tyron Smith, when he's healthy, he's at the second best left tackle. It's just when he's healthy. Hopefully he can play more this year, but honestly, who knows? What else? Zeke, this is a big year because his guaranteed money is over this year, and they can cut him next year and be fine. Personally, I don't think they do that because, one, I don't think you want to upset your quarterback unless they feel like they're going to get rid of him too, which I don't foresee happening this next offseason. So unless Zeke has a drastically bad year, I feel like they'll throw some type of money at him. But I do think that he'll have a good year. I'd hope that Pollard gets more touches than he has in the past. But yeah, all of the things you said were great. I feel like this is the first episode in a while, if not forever, that all of us have agreed on basically everything. Penalties were really big, and one thing I liked about that is that Dallas has like actual officials at their training camp practices to make sure that everything is clean, which I like a lot. Um, and yeah, I think that if Dallas were to do even a tenth of the things that you and I said, that they would be in a much better position than they are right now.
Yeah. One quick rebuttal that I have for my main focus of getting rid of old people and replacing them
Mm-hmm.
is, you know, finding reasons to keep players like Ezekiel Elliott on your team is not helping anybody other than Ezekiel Elliott. Because while Dak can be upset that he's losing his, rookie roommate or whatever they were at the time, you're still going to replace him with fresher legs, probably more talented guy who's really going to, change life for the running game and going to improve their stock. As for Demarcus Lawrence, it's not necessarily about the sacks. It's about when you put him alongside a guy like Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa, Myles Garrett, Aaron Donald, um, what's his name? I'm blanking. The guy to the opposite side of Nick Bosa on the 49ers. I think his name's D Ford. One of
No,
the
no, no,
probably
no.
um,
Armstead.
Armstead. Like you're putting him alongside those guys, and it's very easy to figure out who is better than the other. Like Demarcus Lawrence is a good player, and he did a lot of great things when he came back. But the person who changed the Cowboys defense was Micah Parsons and not Demarcus Lawrence. Demarcus Lawrence was able to do a little bit more, being the second guy and being a little bit overlooked because everyone was so keen on stopping Micah Parsons. Demarcus Lawrence was able to shine. So I definitely I agree with you that there is light at the end of the tunnel for him to really cement his spot this year. However, it's more of a like you need the Cowboys must objectively evaluate their roster after this year, depending on how it goes. Because for them to keep the same players, say the same, we like our guys that we have. We're going to rebuild in the draft. We're not even going to give Von Miller a chance, even though he said he'd take less. We're just going to throw, for a golf reference, Kirkland golf balls instead of Titleist golf balls at him, expecting him to sign with us. It's not going to work. So just stuff like that. But everything else, I'm on par with. I'm with you on. We can move on.
No, one thing about I feel like if you just have three guys that only get you sacks, then your run game is going to be awful. And Parsons is a sack guy. Sam Williams is a sack guy who is not all that good against the run. So you don't need Demarcus Lawrence to get you 10 plus sacks. Would it be nice? Yeah, but if he fills a hole versus the run, then that's something that Sam Williams can't give you right now. And Sam Williams has fresher legs than Demarcus Lawrence does. And you just gave a 3-year contract to what's his name? You just gave a 3-year
Armstrong.
contract. What'd you say?
Armstrong? Dorrance
Yes,
Armstrong?
you just gave Dorrance a 3-year contract. You gave Dante Fowler a contract. So I'm not. Would I like to have Demarcus Lawrence get 10 plus sacks? Sure. Do I think he has the ability to? Sure. But I would much rather him just be the best run defender on the team, and like guys like Basham, Sam Williams, Dante Fowler, Dorrance get 10, 15 sacks combined. But I do agree with what you're saying. You shouldn't just keep guys to keep them, and you should always try to get better.
Yeah,
But
here's a good scenario to kind of close out this
mhm,
back and forth. If Chandler Jones became available tomorrow, are you sticking with Demarcus Lawrence or are you going after Chandler Jones?
I would. Would you mean I would have to cut Demarcus Lawrence or just
If you if it, throw everything out the window, if Chandler Jones was available tomorrow and all you had to do was swap him for Demarcus Lawrence,
I I don't know off the top of my head um what Chandler Jones's rush numbers are and all that, but I would take DeMarcus just because I know that Parsons can get you what Chandler gets you. Now, granted, if Chandler Jones is a even or better player against the run, then I'll take Chandler. So this may have to be a do homework and then revisit next week.
well, the only reason why I bring up his name is one, if I said Miles Garrett, you would obviously say Miles Garrett. If you didn't, we'd have to reevaluate you. Um, but Chandler Jones, the last basically since his rookie year, has averaged more sacks than Demarcus Lawrence in his best year.
This is true.
So that's one thing. The second thing is he has been a top 10 defensive end, closer to top 5 in recent years. He's not. He's a very overlooked player because he's sharing the ranks with the Nick Bosa's, Miles Garrett, who comes off the edge, Aaron Donald, who plays really any defensive line position, Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, all those great people. So he's very overlooked. But I wanted to use him as my example. One, because he's basically in the same ballpark of talent, but he gives you more in that, you know, game changing. Like I understand the running stats, and Demarcus Lawrence does have good running stats, but it's more of like the and I know that he made solid plays, but it's more of the is he who has a more likely chance of impacting a game? Is it going to be Chandler Jones getting a strip sack, or is it going to be Marcus Lawrence making a tackle for a 5 yard loss from the running back? But I mean,
Yeah,
like
no,
you
I
said, I'll let you do some research, and we can come back to this in
yeah.
week 10 whenever the Cowboys whatever record that they're at.
If if Dallas didn't have Micah, then I'd say Chandler, but I feel like it's good to have both types of players. Micah's both. He can get you sacks and he can be good against the run. Demarcus, before they got Micah, Demarcus had to do everything, and Randy, who was always off, who always had off the field issues. It was a shame that we never got to see Randy and Demarcus play when they were both younger, because our perception of both players would be very different. Demarcus was getting double and triple teamed sometimes, and sure, he probably should have beaten, or he probably should have, or he definitely should have won some of those double and triple teams or made more of an impact. But when you have the defensive end, Ray, you're gonna have to tell me who his name is. 'Cause I forget. That was a rookie 2015, great year for the 49ers, and then played for Oakland. I forget his name.
Um, good lord. Is it the guy that we just had on our team?
Yeah, last year.
Oh,
Um,
the guy who was suspended for a while.
yes.
I don't remember. It'll come to me
Let me
eventually.
see if I can. What was this guy's name? Well, basically, let me. Well, Ray, if the name comes to you, the name comes to you. But basically, when you have guys like that across from you who aren't really making the greatest of impacts, then yes, of course, it's going to be more difficult for you to get extremely high sacks. But this year, this year for me as a fan is a big year for guys like Demarcus Lawrence and Zeke and all these guys who have been here for a while but have kind of not lived up to the expectations that they have just because they have, I would say at least, talent around them that they have not had for some time. And Dante Fowler, who was good with Dan Quinn. Looking forward to having him back. I feel like he can make a good impression. Also, Tariq, I forget something started with an M. He was drafted by the Falcons a few years ago. He tore his Achilles. Dallas may resign him. So they just love their Achilles guys apparently. But Ray, if you have nothing else you'd like to comment on, um,
I'm good. We can move on. I'm still thinking
so
on
am
who the
I.
guy's name is.
Um, I believe I have it. Alden Smith.
Yep, that's it.
That was, look at us solving our own problems. So one thing from camp over the last 3 or 4 days that has impressed you. If you want to do two, you can do two, but just one thing.
Well, the one thing that I had we already talked about was the phenomenal catch by the man himself, who
TJ
I'm
Bosher.
TJ Mosham. That was phenomenal. I very much enjoyed watching that. Um, the other thing that impressed me was Mr. Anthony Brown housing a pick six on Mr. Dakota. I was very happy to see Mr. Anthony read Dak Prescott's staring down of his receiver and then ultimately not dropping the ball and taking it back for six. So those were two very nice plays. As for A positive thing to say about Dak, he did have a good 7-on-7 day today.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. I would like to see a better view of that pick because I'm not sure if it was staring down or just because it looked like Anthony just broke correctly and just I don't know. I would have to get a better view. That's what I hate about camp videos because you can never see whose fault it is. But one thing that I enjoyed from camp was seeing Tyler Smith throw Tristan Hill like a rag doll. That was pretty funny. Also, how impactful CD Lamb was. Today was a really big day for him. Him and Dak looked amazing. Just from some of the videos that I was seeing, it looked like CD was catching everything, and
Who was on CD and 7-on-7?
it was a few guys. There was one time where um, I'm not sure it was Zeke, but the one play that I saw that was really good, they had J-Ron Curse on him, but
But why
I'm
is
not.
Trevon Diggs not on CD Lamb?
I'm not sure. Well for that one play, it was just how the design was, but I'll have to go. I haven't seen um, Gallup. Sorry, I haven't seen Diggs on CD and 7-on-7, but I could. I'll have to get back to you next week or next episode and say who was on him today.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Well, now we get Ray's favorite topic ever, and this is probably the one thing that Ray is most proud of about this podcast because he is the one that started this topic. So, Ray, why don't I just let you talk about it because I know you've been chomping at the bit.
Well, yes, at the moment that we've all been waiting for. What is the escape from reality topic that we have today? Is it the Trey Lance rocket throw that's gone viral of
Uh,
Mr. Trey Lance throwing a dime? Is it the Zach Wilson dime? Is it the the Tyreek Hill dime?
there's
No,
a lot.
because this is not a football related camp video. This is a football related contract segment. And to give a little context, our wonderful Oklahoma former Oklahoma quarterback friend Kyler Murray, who's number 1 overall pick in the draft to the Arizona Cardinals, who got destroyed by the Los Angeles Rams in his first postseason start. He signed a contract to be, I believe it was the highest, not guaranteed, but the highest paying contract for a quarterback thus far. So he got the back. However, that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about a very specific little fine print type of thing in there where the Cardinals requested Kyle Murray to participate in 4 hours of film per week outside of the building with no video games, no TV, no Netflix, no Amazon, no YouTube, no
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty, no websites that will not be disclosed on this podcast, all that stuff. So, what does that tell me? Number one, I asked the question, how good would Kyler Murray be if he actually studied? Number two, how the heck did the Cowboys lose to Kyler Murray when he wasn't studying? And number three, is this even important because the Cardinals removed the clause 3 days later because everyone was slandering their quarterback with good reason? But I mean, as for me, I think Kyler Murray is a really talented player, and he does a lot of great things for the Cardinals that they really haven't had on their team in a long time since basically Kurt Warner was their quarterback. Kyler Murray's really kind of changed life for them. But if he's able to do all the things that he does early on in the year with basically coming up with BS on the fly and making it work, then there's a lot of potential for him to be great, but he's just not putting in the time. And that's just really upsetting because you have
That is the dehumidifier.
amazing.
But continue.
Um, trail of thought, trail of thought, trail of thought, trail of thought.
Talking about being great,
Yes.
Kyler
He
Murray.
could be yes. He could be so much better if he was just, putting in the time like a Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, uh,
Dak
Joe
Prescott.
Burrow, even maybe Dak, even though he's borderline okay slash good. Um, I'm sure Mahomes watches a lot of tape. Even Mahomes, we could talk about how Mahomes was still not really, didn't really know how the great about defenses, but he still was. There's no doubt he was putting in the effort to learn. Like, how much do we really know if Kyler Murray is really putting in a lot of effort to learn? And that's what's really, upsetting and a little bit frustrating is the fact that he's so good, he's so talented, but hasn't really put in the time and really put in the hours to be great. However, he's about to get paid like he is the best. So that's how what I want to say to start off this topic. The goal is for Owen to finish the topic, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try to paint the picture about how I think this went. Kyler goes with his nice little pen. Him and his lawyers looking over the contract. They agree to the contract. They see the contract and they see the clause about him having to do 4 hours independent study. He signs the contract. Him and Cliff Kingsbury and the general manager shake hands and say, "We are very happy to have you on the part of this franchise." Kyler Murray goes home, realizes, "Oh my goodness, I have to do this." And then he tells his PR team to leak it. And then it looks so bad because then you have people bringing up things that Kyler Murray is not motivated. There were a lot of racial things that were brought up against against Cardinals for doing this to Kyler Murray. Just a lot of things that did not look good for the Cardinals. And you had Cliff Kingsbury who said, "I had nothing to do with this," even though I'm sure he did because he's the head coach. And then they ended up removing it because they got cyberbullied into removing it. Personally, I think that if Kyler was had such an issue with it, then he should not have signed the contract. Just like Randy Gregory did not sign the contract because he had an issue with something that was said in it. Kyler Murray didn't have to sign the contract. But I thought that it was pretty funny that they basically said you can't watch film and play video games at the same time. About that. And someone made a joke. It was like if you ever realize that as soon as Call of Duty comes out, Kyler Murray and the Cardinals don't play well, and it was like okay, because COD comes out and he's not practicing anymore. He's just playing video games. But Kyler's a good quarterback. I'd like to see him play better in the second half. But it was overall an extremely funny few days hearing about all this.
It was indeed. I mean, the comments of how, I mean, honestly, just to kind of close this out, is I did like what Kyler came out and said in the press conference, saying that the reports and the media attention and the media remarks were blatantly just a joke and disrespectful based on where he's gotten to. And I don't think he's wrong in saying that because I don't think you could just BS your way through high school, through college, and then into the NFL by not doing any sort of study. Um, I do think I think the what needs to be focused on is the deterioration of the Cardinals offense from week 7-8 to week 16-17, because that's kind of the thing. It's like, where is this drop off coming from? And the easy answer was injury. But now with this coming out, it goes back to defenses are adjusting and Kyler Murray is not adjusting with the defenses. Why is that? Because
That's a good point.
he's not watching film. to see what defenses are changing. Therefore, he's not getting his, he's not ready for disguises of blitz packages, disguises of coverage, can QB contain, all that fun stuff. So I think what the Cardinals were trying to do was to try and to advance him from the, I guess, the bare, I don't want to say bare minimum, but what he's been doing, and kind of, and to elevate him into the, how can I always be at one step ahead of my opponent, like the Peyton Mannings, Tom Brady's, Drew Brees, Mahomes, whatever. But it definitely was a laugh. I definitely enjoyed it. There was a comment from Chris or Colin Cowherd about how Brett Favre didn't watch tape and blah blah blah. I thought that was dumb. But yeah, I
Colin's a big OU guy, so it all. No, sorry, OU USC. Yeah, he's a big OU USC guy. So
yeah. So that was the one person I was like, you're not helping my happiness right now. But yeah, that's what I got on that. Yeah, Kyler, even though you bullied them, or the media bullied them into removing it, I still hope that you do study on your own time, because it would really help your team, especially with, DeAndre Hopkins not being around for a couple weeks, because he supposedly did or did not take performance enhancement drugs, even though it didn't really help very much.
I feel like he definitely needs to step it up, because if he comes out week one and plays a dud game, they'd be like, "Oh, I wonder if he studied, or I wonder if he did this." So I don't think this is going to go away. It may be out of his contract, but I don't think that it's going to go away from the media for
Yeah,
quite some time,
I mean,
unless he wins a ring.
the one thing that Skip Bayless said in the last 24 hours that I have thought was intelligent was the fact that Kyler Murray needs to win a Super Bowl, and that is the only thing that's going to get rid of this. Anything
Yep.
else other than a Super Bowl victory is just throwing fuel to the fire.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, I guess the only other thing I could think of that could kind of solve this problem is maybe winning a league MVP. But other than those two things, I think it just adds fuel to the fire.
Well, everyone, make sure to follow us on Twitter at America's Team, capital P, capital C. Ray and I have been a lot more active on that, which is good. Been able to talk to y'all and just communicate with the Dallas fan base as a whole. Get to meet new people and get to think about, especially today for me personally, get to see what other people think about who they should bring in for a new wide receiver. But definitely, y'all do not want to miss out on Ray's tweets during the games. They are A plus, and a few pluses after that.
Some have called them S tier tweets.
This is true. Whatever is greater than S tier. His tweets are like the Tom Brady tweets. He just has GOAT tweets.
Even if they're slandering Dak Prescott in mid game, Owen still gives them S tier grades, which is very warming to my heart.
It's just good to see your name. It's just good to see it pop up on my phone, and that's something I can laugh at while I'm internally crying. But yeah, the Hall of Fame games coming up this weekend, and then we have football. Dallas plays in a week and a half. I'm sad that there's not going to be any hard knocks, so I won't be able to get more in depth about Cowboys drama. But I hope y'all are excited for the football season as we are. This is our second football season going into a part of this podcast, doing it together. And we are definitely looking forward to thinking about what we did last year and just making that better as a whole, more enjoyable for us and more enjoyable for y'all. So Ray and I are definitely excited for that.
Yeah. We did try out some things in this episode that we will continue to evaluate in the future. We have a lot of exciting things planned for next season. Some things that we're going to try out, add on, include, take away, just to kind of always trying to get better. So we're really excited for the future, especially getting into some games, breaking down some performances, film,
Yeah.
all that fun stuff. But
Jerry could learn a thing or two about learning. About, Jerry could learn a thing or two about listening to what you just said, try to get better and all that. You may have
I
to
agree.
email it to him.
I am very on on the same wavelength, even though it is almost one for me and two for you. But um, I
But
think it's
yeah,
about time that we do wrap it up. This has been a phenomenal episode
yeah,
of All About America's Team. We are thrilled to be in training camp. We are thrilled to
yeah,
be a few weeks away from the NFL season. We are thrilled to be almost done with college, which is semi relevant to this
yes,
podcast.
it is very relevant.
Um, but ultimately, just ready to kick off our internal suffering as Cowboys fans. And
Yes,
with that, I am Ray Nickens,
and I am Owen the Chico,
and this has been All About America's
America's
Team.
team. Have a great night, y'all.
Go
Go
Cowboys.
Cowboys.